Welcome back to another episode of the Outdoor Adventures podcast here on Brownfield. I'm Brent Barnett. Really excited about the show this week. Joining us is Gregg Ritz, the president and owner of Thompson Center Arms. Gregg, thanks for being here. It's a pleasure to have you on.
It's a joy to be here. You know, I appreciate the opportunity and obviously everything you do for the sportsmen out there as well as the farmers.
Well, we appreciate that. And, you know, Gregg, I was thinking before we got on the call here, I know I think the first time I saw you on TV was on one of those older Monster Bucks DVDs that Bill Jordan and the Realtree guys put out. And you guys were hunting with some Thompson Center Encore muzzleloaders. And, man, what a lifetime of memories, those older DVDs on those Monster Buck series.
I know. It takes you back in time. And, boy, I would have to think, Brent, I mean, we're talking 20, 25 years ago. And, you know, which would have probably put you at, you know, I don't know how old, but, you know, 10 years old or so. I mean, you couldn't have been that old if we go back that far in time.
Yeah, I think it was right about 9 or 10 years old. I remember you had a lot of hunts on there, even some really good bow hunts back in the day that were on there as well. Any memories just kind of off the top of your mind working there with the Realtree guys back then?
Oh, absolutely. You know, Bill Jordan and I spent a lot of time together hunting at the Milk River. And, you know, I grew up in Maryland and, you know, that's where I was born and raised and got introduced to hunting and, you know, all on public land. And then, you know, started hunting in Virginia and George Washington National Forest is 1 million acres. So you just think about how big that is. But we didn't have the big deer that the Midwest had because we didn't have the farmers contributing to planting the soybeans and the other crops, right? The winter wheat and what have you that grow these big whitetails today. But Bill Jordan had found this honey hole little spot on the northeast Montana called the Milk River. And those deer lived in such a small little piece of habitat, but it was really the farm ground, right? It was the alfalfa fields that grew these monster-bodied, monster-rack whitetails. And we spent a lot of years sitting on those bluffs, looking over the bottom fields, playing strategy out. And, you know, I get an opportunity at least once a year to still see Bill and, you know, commend him for all he's done to you know, entertain a lot of people over the years and get them into the sport of hunting. And I just remember being a little kid. I say little kid, obviously I was in my 20s back then. And sitting on there just listening to every word that man said because he was the god of the whitetail world. And by gosh, we killed a lot of good deer together.
You could really see a shift back then when I don't remember which Monster Buck series it was. You know, there's a whole bunch of them now, but I remember a specific year where it seemed like, wow, like all these guys are using this single shot rifle that looks so cool. And it was the Thompson Center Encore. And I just always remember being like, man, I want that gun someday.
Yep. And it's interesting to see it come back around, right? I mean, it became so popular, you know, in the 90s and early 2000s. And then, you know, then obviously marketing changes. And, you know, Smith & Wesson at the time had acquired Thompson Center and their focus on marketing had shifted somewhat. And then obviously bow hunting became big and crossbow hunting and but now things are coming kind of full circle. And, you know, I was able to buy the company back here almost a year ago, Brent. I mean, April of last year. And, you know, by the time this podcast airs, you know, knock on wood, we're going to be shipping product, which is amazing. Consider we moved you know, everything back to New Hampshire, which is where Thompson Center started back in '65 in Rochester, New Hampshire. And we're bringing all the old employees back and USA made and customer service, everything the way it used to be. And through this process, you know, we've been putting a lot out on social media and YouTube. And, you know, you forget at how blessed you are with the following that we have, people like yourself and your friends and your relatives, right, who knew of Thompson Center. And now they're going to be able to put a new gun in their hand and start creating new memories here this fall.
Yeah, so catch us up to speed on kind of the timelines here, Gregg, because I remember catching a headline here over the last year. You know, a lot of outlets saying Thompson Center Arms is back in business. So if I understand correctly, you repurchased the company and now we're getting back in business here.
Yep. So I'll take you back a little bit. Smith & Wesson purchased Thompson Center in 2007. And they had different guns that came out and what have you. But then during the COVID years, the demand for Smith & Wesson products was so great, right, for their handguns and their ARs, that in 2021 they stopped production of Thompson Center products. They hit the pause button, and because they had such a demand for their own product line, because they closed the facility down in Rochester, New Hampshire in 2010 and moved everything to Springfield. So it was really easy to reallocate people and machinery to make more handguns and ARs. Well, COVID ends, right? And all those dollars got absorbed in the marketplace, and they're like, oh, how do we restart TC? And they kind of lost the recipe. So in the fall, November of 23, I entered into conversations with the folks over at Smith & Wesson, and in April of last year, purchased them back and but I would only do so if it was going to be family owned, privately owned. There's no investor money in this business. There isn't a big conglomerate behind it. It's all family owned, and with the understanding, it's all going back to Rochester, New Hampshire, right back to the original gun designers, the original folks who made them. And because that was really my personal goal, is to bring it right back into the community that it started in 1965.
I saw a pretty recent video on YouTube where I think you were maybe going into one of the original warehouses and looking at some of the original models from back in the day. Can you talk with the listeners what that experience was like for you?
Yeah, it was really humbling when you think about the legacy and the heritage of Thompson Center. So we're 60 years old this year. And a lot of the younger folks, maybe even yourself, don't really know the history of Thompson Center. So when you go look at these older guns, you got to ask yourself, well, who designed this gun? When did it come out? Why was it popular? So in 1965, Warren Center was working for Harrington and Richardson down in Connecticut. Okay, H&R. Most people have heard that name out there. And he came up with this interchangeable single-shot handgun called the Contender. He named it the Contender in his basement. And he wanted H&R to bring it out, and H&R said, no, that's not our brand. That's not what we're interested in. But being a gun designer and a New Englander, he was focused on bringing this gun out. So he was looking for a place to make the investment castings, runs into Ken Thompson in New Hampshire, who had a foundry business called KW Thompson Tool Company. And, Warren Center's talking to Ken Thompson about making the investment castings, the receiver and trigger guard and the hammer. And Ken Thompson was like, well, instead of just making parts for you, why don't we form a business? And so Ken Thompson, Warren Center, became Thompson Center Arms in 65. And then 67, the Contender comes out. And then 1970, they knew they had to diversify. And they wanted to be more into hunting, because the Contender, people handgun hunted, but mainly it was silhouette shooting, target shooting, things of that nature. So they brought out the Hawk and muzzleloader. And what they didn't realize was it was going to be used in the 1972 film Jeremiah Johnson with Robert Redford. And that spawned this whole passion and love for the frontiersman, right? The mountain man. And everybody had to have a Hawk and muzzleloader. And then from there, states started creating muzzleloader seasons. And Iowa has a muzzleloader season, right? And it's, really popular for people to hunt at the end of the year with their muzzleloader. And so seeing all those old guns brought me back to the heritage of the company.
That late muzzleloader season, that's a popular one for sure. No doubt about that. And this past year myself, I tried Iowa's early muzzleloader season that takes place in mid-October. That was a really cool kind of experience. It's almost like treating bow hunting, but like setting up in your bow hunting sets in early season, but having that muzzleloader with you. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. In muzzleloading, there's a lot of technology in it, and it's gotten simplified. But at the end of the day, it's still pretty primitive. It's one shot, right? It is the single shot challenge. And there's a lot of the younger generation now and bow hunters who like the idea of hunting in different seasons, having a different equipment, but still having that challenge where when you squeeze a trigger, that puff of smoke comes out and that's it, right? I mean, if you weren't on that deer, you just missed it, or elk or whatever else you're hunting.
even with the pause that we saw, Greg, what's it mean to you to see all the feedback online of people that are so excited to see you guys back? And, even like for myself, I see family members that still have like the TC Pro Hunter. I know I have a lot of friends that shoot the TC Impact still to this day. I mean, that's got to feel good that, when you're taking on this venture again.
You know it does, because there's if you really boil this back to the gun community and the hunters, and you'll appreciate this growing up, this comment, it is about tradition. It is about heritage. And of course, you can really understand this from a farming standpoint too, because like farming has the same qualities that hunting has, where it's passed down from generation to generation. So just like land is passed down in the farming community, guns are passed down, and the knowledge of hunting and deer camp and those experiences are passed down. And I was really humbled and reminded of how many great memories were formed from millions of people who went out with a Thompson Center gun, whether it was a single shot Encore, whether it was a muzzleloader like the Impact or the or the Mega or whatever those models were, the Hawken. And I want to bring all of those memories back to the forefront and bring new guns and create new memories and new experiences for people. And that's really the reason behind the relaunch or rebirth of Thompson Center.
I'm not sure what you can share with us at this point, so feel free to direct me as we go. But I mean, what is in the pipeline here? Have you announced any product launches since you've purchased the company back?
Yeah, so the Encore platform, and so what I mean by platform, rifle, shotgun, muzzleloader, and handgun, right? So they all work off the same frame, right? You'll have a buttstock or a grip or a different barrel configuration. All of those. That platform is going to be relaunched. It will be, by the time this podcast airs, we'll have product in the field. So think about this. Last April, we purchased the intellectual property of Thompson Center, the trademarks, the copyrights, the patents, right? The drawings, but that's it. Now, we got some parts and pieces and some things and some jigs and some fixtures, but we didn't get equipment. We didn't have any workers. And I laughed. Like when we closed, I was employee number one, and I didn't even own a stapler. I mean, when I say we had nothing, we had nothing but a dream. And that dream was to rebuild the legacy, bring the product out. And we chose the Encore platform because it's the most universal. So people in the slug gun season, right? They can go slug gun hunting with the Encore. In states that allow straight wall cartridges, right, in lieu of slug guns, we brought those out. Or people want to go on an elk hunt. We got 300 Win Mag or a muzzleloader, or just want to go out and plink with a handgun. So that is launching. Literally, we're putting product in the inventory today that will be shipped out at the end of the week. And then from there, Brent, we're going to bring out the Contender, which is kind of a little brother of the Encore, but the historical significance dating back to 65. Now, think about this. Every frame made since 1965, or every barrel made from 1965, will continue to be interchangeable.
Oh, wow.
So
that's really cool.
What we make today, so if we make a frame today and you get a barrel from 65 or 67, actually they were shipped in 67, or vice versa, we'll interchange. And why is that? Because we have the same gun designers, the same gun builders, the same operations people, the same people in production control as we did 30 years ago.
How convenient for the shooters, to have that platform and to have the ability to get the barrel they need for each season.
Well, and think of how many new calibers are out there, right? So the straight wall cartridges, right? So the 360 Buckhammers, the 350 Legends, the 400 Legends, the 450 Bushmasters, the 22 Arcs, the 6 Arcs, right? All these new cartridges have come out, and the ones that will fit in the Encore are all being evaluated. Threading the barrel for a suppressor or a muzzle brake is super popular right now. So we're modernizing a lot of this. We're making investment in technology to make the product more accurate, more easy to use, better triggers. But the biggest thing, anybody can do that. Anybody can make a part. What we're doing is we're making a family. We're bringing the family back together. and the hashtag we have is We Are TC. And we're encouraging. So we launched a Facebook community. You'll like this one. Launched a Facebook community, I don't know, 2-3 months ago, right?
Yep.
And got 1,000 people kicking around. We're over 13,000 people.
Wow.
And that fast. And that's what we want. In society today, we have too much noise going on, right? I want to bring families back together, hunters back together, people back together. What better way than to rally around a sport? What better way to rally behind a wildlife project, right? And what you're truly passionate about. So TC is not just about a product; it's about this core family that you yourself have participated in.
Yeah, absolutely. What a great story here, Gregg. And I'm glad you mentioned the suppressor, because I'm pretty sure just like a couple weeks ago, a reel popped up in my Instagram feed of you trying out a suppressor on one of the models. Is that right?
It is. Yep. And it's interesting. I've been around the gun community now for I don't know how many years, 30 some years. And I will tell you without a doubt, like for example, this weekend, my oldest daughter, Sydney, she's 22. She goes, Dad, I want to go to the gun range. And she does a ton of bow hunting, shoots her bow virtually every day. And but they grew up around guns. So we go to the range and she's never shot a suppressor. And so we're just shooting a 308 Encore, right? Which she's handled, right? She's killed a lot of deer with a gun, mainly with a muzzleloader, not so much with a rifle. And I put the suppressor on that and her eyes got this big. And she goes, "Ooh, I like this." Hardly any noise, reduced recoil, and it created this fun factor. So what she do? She jumps on Instagram, she's taking pictures, she's putting TikToks out there. That's what you want. Like, if we're going to share the experience, we got to think like the younger kids share experiences. They share it on a phone, on a device. Your dad and I, we shared over a cup of coffee in a cafe, right? If we're a farmer, we're down at the local diner, right? Sharing our stories. Well, the younger generation shares their stories differently. It doesn't mean they don't have stories. They do it differently. And having cool products like a suppressor just makes it that much more sticky or interesting for people to share.
Gregg, thanks so much for being here with us today. Truly appreciate the time. Kind of as we wind down, how can folks stay connected with some of the updates from Thompson Center Arms?
Well, please go onto our website, tcarms.com, look at our Instagram handles, look at our Facebook handles, and obviously follow us on YouTube with TC Arms as well, because we want everybody to share in this experience. So everything that we do on a weekly basis, we're telling you where we're at. We're taking you behind the scenes to let you know who is behind the company. Because at the end of the day, the people are the company, and we want to share that experience with everybody.
Yeah, big message here today. Thompson Center is back, and there's a lot of great stuff coming up. Gregg, again, thank you, and what a pleasure to meet you here. I know it's virtually over Zoom, but I feel like this is kind of a dream interview for me. Just going back to watching you back in the days on some of those DVDs. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Let's do this again.
Sounds good. Again, that's Gregg Ritz joining us here on the Outdoor Adventures podcast. We appreciate you joining us. I'm Brent Barnett here with Brownfield Ag News. We hope you have a great weekend.